It's time to welcome back an old friend. And if you follow the Traders podcast from its beginnings, you know what I'm talking about. It's time. What's going on, everybody? Jeremy Ritz, courage pays better than fear trading. And I am super excited today because I am bringing back an old friend. Yes, Mr. Roku. Starting this week, I'm going to be doing a weekly segment on Roku, ticker symbol ROKU. And today's a special day to do that because there was news with a partnership between Roku and Amazon, and it got a subsequent pop from that. But this is going to be a weekly series for Infinity so that we can stay aware of the stock, how it's moving, upcoming news, get ready for earnings reports, you name it, we're going to cover it. So the weekly Roku series starts now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first week of the Mr. Roku series. If you follow the Traders podcast for any period of time, you know that I always had this in there weekly when I would do the podcast. And I was like, you know what? I'm missing something. What is it? And I'm missing a little Mr. Roku in my life. And today is a fun day to come back to this analysis. We're going to be doing this weekly because, let me pull this up here, Roku shares climb on advertising deal with Amazon. We could read through here. Shares of Roku jumped after the company teamed with Amazon.com to give advertisers access to more than 80% of internet-connected TVs in the U.S. So that's a pretty massive partnership. And if you read down here, the partnership combines the addressable audiences of two streaming heavyweights, giving advertisers access to ad space on Amazon's Prime Video service, the Roku channel, and other streaming services found on Roku and Amazon Fire TV operating system. So very positive news for the company Roku. We got a pretty big pop here, but you could see that we gapped up after the weakness that came in from the Iran-Israeli conflict. And this made a high today of 84.28, and it has since sold down. But let's just drill into the 3-minute to look at what has transpired here today. And so you could see here that in pre-market around 4 a.m., it was ticking up and then pushed higher. And then right at market open is when it really started to push, 84.37, sold down, came down to an intraday low of, let's see here, 79.92, and now it's creeping back up. But let's just look at it on the longer time frames just to get a feel for how this thing has been working the last couple of months. And I want to start with the monthly. I always like to look at the all-time high on stocks. And you can see that this one actually hit an all-time high of $492. Now, this was back in 2021 when everything was just ripping crazily. And that, if there's a textbook double top, there you go. There's one if I've ever seen one. You could see those long upper wicks coming in here. This gravestone doji drop, making that trough there, came back up, made another peak. And really on this candle in July of 2021, that started this massive sell-off. And remember, this led into that bear market of 2022. And this thing shed a ton of value. And really, it bottomed out here in December of 2022. You almost had tweezer bottoms come in, and then this thing started to push out of here. Now, it hasn't been all smooth selling from Roku because even though it did get a bounce out of there, the highest price it has been at since that massive drop has been $108.34. And you'd have to go back to December of 2023 for when that happened. And so since that time, you could see that this thing fell way back down to its COVID lows. If we go back to COVID of 2020, we could see that here, and then made another push out. It got above that 200 SMA on the weekly here. This was February off of its earnings report, made a high of 105.08, but then once again sold down. And so this nice little trend line support that dates back to December 2022 has held pretty steady here. So December, and then we had a bounce off it in January of 23. It bounced off it again in August of 24 with that flash crash off of the unemployment fears. And then it came down and touched this again in April when everything really bottomed out. So we do have some pretty strong support here. And just looking at this on the monthly, we could see that we currently are above many of the moving averages. We do have the 200 SMA on the weekly overhead, and then we do have that 50 on the monthly. But In order for us to get back up into this range, we would have to make a new recent high that Roku hasn't done in quite some time, because it's really just done a whole lot of nothing here recently. And this chart almost reminds me, let's just go look at this on the daily real fast. And if you just look and see that since that drop, it's just been moving sideways. And I'm not saying that this is going to be an exact replica of the move, but this kind of reminds me of one Roblox chart, because you could see here a similar thing, big all-time high in 2021. It dropped, it moved sideways, right? Had a nice little support established here, and then it broke out. So could Roku be setting up potentially for that kind of move? Maybe. This partnership does bode well for it, and we'll just have to pay attention and see what happens. We could see that since we broke below those COVID lows during the sell-off in April when everything really bottomed, we did have a nice support structure come into play here, and we got a double bottom, right? You could really identify two double bottoms here. This is a fractal double bottom. We broke out above that neckline, but if we're zooming out and looking at it a little bit from a wider perspective, we could see a double bottom here as well. There's our neckline, and really since then, we've just been hanging out, right? We pushed up above that neckline, all those moving averages, but got rejected, came back down, retested that neckline, pushed back up, and then today we gapped up. So potentially Roku could be ready for its next push higher, and it does have lots of space above it to hit that 200 SMA on the weekly, which will be a significant support. Now let's look at it on the weekly. We do see that we have the 200 EMA on the weekly at 89. And we actually need to adjust this 200 SMA. We see that 200 SMA is actually 95, 97. So there are some intermediate resistance areas that we're going to want to watch here. And again, that recent high, we have to go back to February whenever it gapped up off of its earnings report. We'd be watching that to see if it does push up into those 100s, if it does somehow clear this 200 SMA on the weekly, what does it do when it gets back up near that recent high? Because those have a tendency to serve as resistance areas. We'll be watching this here over the next few weeks. And what we also want to pay attention to is the next time that they report earnings, which tentatively, because it is still early and this date can be adjusted, it looks like Roku is slated to report on July 31st. So we'll want to watch what it does going into this earnings report. The last time that it reported, it did have a gap down. The time before that, it gapped up. And really, outside of that gap up in February, this thing has struggled on earnings reports for quite some time. So it hasn't been a big mover, but in the past, it has been. So potentially with this news that has come out, maybe Roku is setting up for a nice move. It feels so good to welcome back Mr. Roku. And let me know your thoughts about where you see the ticker going in the next few weeks down below in the comments. Smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you back here next week to talk about our dear friend. Make it a great day.